That evening, the city lights shimmered across the skyline as I adjusted my tie in the rearview mirror. My wife, Elena, had been waiting for this company gala for weeks, her excitement radiating every time she talked about the new executives who would be there. She worked at a high-profile advertising firm where every handshake and every smile had the potential to change the course of a career. I knew how much it meant to her, so I went along not to shine, but to support her, to be the steady presence she could lean on. The ballroom was already alive when we walked in, soft jazz humming through the speakers, the faint clink of champagne glasses, and the gentle roar of mingled conversations. Elena looked stunning in her emerald dress, the kind that made heads turn as we stepped into the crowd. I stayed a step behind her, comfortable in the shadows, shaking hands politely when introduced, offering quiet nods, and letting her glow. It was her night, and I had no desire to be the center of attention. But then came Marcus. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a smirk plastered across his face like he owned the entire room. His handshake was deliberate, just tight enough to feel like a challenge. "So, you're Elena's husband," he said, eyes scanning me as though I were some misplaced guest at his exclusive gathering. His tone wasn't curious, it was dismissive. I answered evenly, "That's right." He gave me a look that cut right past the pleasantries. "Must be nice," he said with a half smile, "not having to worry about work while your wife's out here building a real career." The words dripped with condescension, and though his delivery was subtle, the sting was sharp enough for everyone nearby to notice. I felt Elena tense beside me, but I kept my composure. Men like him thrived on reaction, and I wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. Over the next 30 minutes, Marcus circled like a shark. Every chance he got, he slipped in a jab. About how Elena must have married up, about how she deserved someone ambitious, about how I probably didn't understand what it meant to survive in a cutthroat industry. His little clique chuckled awkwardly, caught between politeness and discomfort, but no one stepped in. Elena tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, but Marcus always pulled it back, each remark sharper than the last. Finally, he leaned in, glass of whiskey in hand, his grin widening. "You know," he said, his voice smooth but edged with venom, "in this world it's survival of the fittest. Some people just fade into the background, and nobody even notices they were ever here." As he spoke, his eyes flicked to Elena, testing as though daring her to laugh along. I set my drink down carefully and looked him square in the eye. "Marcus," I said calmly, "you're right. Not everyone can handle competition. But here's the thing. You've spent your career playing games in boardrooms. I spent mine in places where losing meant never coming home." His smirk faltered. I let the silence hang before continuing. My tone measured. 10 years in special forces. Multiple tours overseas. After that, private security for people who had enemies far more dangerous than office rivals. My entire job was to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast people who wanted me gone. So forgive me if your office politics don't exactly impress me. The shift in the room was immediate. Marcus blinked, his confidence cracking as the words settled. A nervous laugh escaped someone at the table, and suddenly the air felt heavier. Marcus muttered something about just joking and turned his attention to his drink, his earlier bravado gone. Elena squeezed my hand under the table, a silent thank you for staying calm until the right moment. For the rest of the evening, Marcus kept his distance. When our paths did cross, his tone was careful, almost deferential. The same colleagues who had laughed nervously at his earlier remarks now asked me about my travels, my experiences, curious but cautious. I gave them only fragments of answers. I hadn't come to boast. I'd come to remind one arrogant man that appearances are deceiving. Later that night, as we walked to the car, Elena let out a soft laugh. "You didn't have to tell him all that," she teased, her eyes glinting with both pride and relief. I grinned, unlocking the car. "I didn't tell him everything," I said. "Just enough." On the drive home, the streetlights streaked past the windshield, and I thought about how often people underestimate the quiet ones. Marcus had looked at me and seen someone ordinary, someone unremarkable. What he didn't realize was that the most dangerous people in any room are usually the ones who don't feel the need to prove it. And that night, I was content to let him figure that out the hard way. From that evening on, Elena told me, Marcus was always polite. almost excessively so. At company events, he'd keep his distance, no more smug remarks, no more jabs. He never crossed that line again. I didn't hold a grudge. There was no need. But I could see it in his eyes every time we locked gazes. He hadn't forgotten. He never would.